Good evening, everybody. Good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Speak Your Truth with Mark Ross podcast. I am your host, Mark Ross, and with me this evening is my host. I'm going to see if I can get your name, your name right. Farzin Maharnidi
It's Marzinani.
Marzinani.
Yeah,
Okay. I wrote down your first name. I didn't write down your last name, so forgive me on that.
that's okay.
Farzin, you are a coach, an author, and you have a very different mindset on how you view life, right?
It
Uh,
is, yeah.
you mentioned that you're a transformation coach. So tell me, what does that mean, and what are you trying to change in a person, Farzan?
So, what I'm mostly interested is breakthrough. So, what is breakthrough? Breakthrough is when you understand something and that understanding changes your view towards that. And then you are seeing things from another angle that you could see before. So that opens up a lot of opportunities, a lot of choices. I give you an example. Let's say that there is a horse race. You know, there is something they put on the horse races. They call those blinders. So they put those kind of things around eyes of the horse race.
Yeah.
Why? Because if the horse gets distracted for a split second, they lose the race. So they put those on the horse races. So they just pay attention to whatever that is in front of them. So some people call it tunnel vision. Tunnel vision means that you only see whatever that is in front of you. So we all have that kind of perspective in life. Why? Because there are some limitations that we have. So most of it is limiting beliefs. So we have specific beliefs that put us in a small frame. We cannot see anything that is beyond it. And every one of us is different. We have different set of beliefs. The core beliefs that we have is different. That everything is different. So we see life differently. So whatever that we consider to be reality is illusion. Why? Because every one of us see the reality differently. So I go outside with my wife and we are walking, and all of a sudden I notice that there is some garbage outside in front of one of the neighbor's house. And then I start thinking that those guys are not responsible. Why did they did that? And those kind of things. Start judging them. My wife is paying attention to the birds that are singing and the color of the trees in the fall, those kind of things. Doesn't pay attention to that garbage. So that garbage exists for me, but it doesn't exist for my wife. So we all see different things. On the outside is the same, but we have those filters. So when we open up and expand our consciousness, we notice that we have different choices. For example, every time that we are dealing with something, it is mostly based on reaction. Reaction is automatic. Reaction is based on whatever we have in our subconscious mind. Because whatever you have in your subconscious mind is an automatic process. Like breathing, like your heart is beating. Even if you are sleeping, is still doing the things that it's going to be doing. So it's an automatic process. Our reactions are like that too. Our reactions are automatic. So when we are reacting to something, on an automatic, on an autopilot mode, we are in that tunnel vision. We don't have any choice. But sometimes in our life, things happen and then it opens up our view. It drops those limiting beliefs. And then imagine the horse that doesn't have those kind of blinders can see even more wider perspective. So we can see that there are some other choices. Instead of reacting to something, we can respond.
And
All
let me
it takes is
let,
just a little bit of pause, a little
okay,
bit of pause, and then we have other choices. We see other choices that we have in that moment.
got you. Because I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, because you made a good point. People have the side by sides on, so you can't see what's at your left or your right. All you can see is what's in front of you. But when you take off the blinders, it's like there's more to life than just what's in front of you. So you expand your thinking and you expand your mental frame of mind, and you expand your perspective.
Exactly.
Am I right? Okay.
Exactly. That's what's happening. And then you notice that we usually react to life based on fear because we are always in a survival mode. Because our mind is designed to help us to be safe. It is not designed to help us to go through progress and success. It is not designed for that. If we want to go through the road of success, we have to deal with the mind first because mind doesn't let us to do that. So what does mind do? It's like a bodyguard. It's always with us. Whatever that you want to do something, you want to achieve something in life, and you try to go forward towards whatever that you feel that is good for you. It might be your health, your wealth, relationship, and happiness, whatever. There is a change. You feel that you want to change something in your life. And then you start that change. What happens is that millions of blocks come to you, like fear of success, fear of failure, fear of change. And even you get sick sometimes when you consistently going towards your goal, even get sick. Because that is the bag of tricks that the mind has to prevent you from moving forward. Why? Because mind says that I want you to sit down wherever you are because I know that you are safe in there. If you go further, I don't know what territory that is going to be. So I'm not going to let you to move forward. So that is why we feel resistance when we want to do something in life. No, we start something and then it is not an easy path. So you sign up to go to the gym when the year starts as your yearly resolution. You go a couple of times and then you have paid the full year. But at the end of the year, you notice that you just used the gym maybe 5 times, 6 times, and stuff like that. Why? Because you want to create a shift, you want to create a change in your life. And your mind is not supporting you, it is preventing you. So we have to know how to deal with that. That is something that is very important. That you bring the mind on board for the changes that you want to make in your life, for the shifts that you want to make in your life.
So for you, for example, Farzin, you started this search at 12, according to what we talked about in our initial interview, correct?
Yes.
This happened at 12 after an injury. Talk about that.
Yeah, I was 12 years old and I was thinking about some stuff that usually people in that age don't think about those. Like, why am I here? What is the true source of joy? And what is the reason for my existence in here? So those kind of big questions, but we usually don't ask those at that age.
No,
We're busy with life and
right.
we were going.
Our
But
minds on other places, man.
yeah. So somehow I had those kind of questions. Why, when I dig down, maybe that the reason was that before I go to school, I was a happy kid. I would I would be very playful, playing with everybody, and I was enjoying life, and uh, I had a good time. But when I went to school, there was a big shift for me. I had to sit down straight. I had to listen to the teacher and write down and do the homework and go to the yard. I get pushed by other people, but by other students. And my mother just left me, just sent me to school. I'm separated from my mother. So all those things caused me to create that barrier. So I said that life is not my friend anymore. I have to be careful. I have to protect myself. So I lost that kind of joy that I had in the childhood, and I was missing it. So I said that why am I'm not experiencing that joy anymore? Because I had that kind of wall, protective wall, the guard. My guard was up towards life. I said that I I might be hit by anybody or anything, so I had to be careful. So you have those kind of things. And then I was thinking about all those, and I wanted to find the source of joy. So I went through books. Why? Because at the time there was no internet and it was long ago. So I didn't have any access to anything else. So I became a collector of books and reading a lot of books. At age 24, I just had more than 1,000 books in my personal library in different subjects: philosophy, spirituality, religion, everything that you name it. I just wanted my answer. I couldn't get the answer. I went through a lot of paths. I couldn't get the answer. I would get the shadow of truth, but not the whole truth. I wasn't satisfied with the shadow of the truth. Because everywhere I would go, they would say something and give me some techniques and stuff. I would practice, but at the end of the day, I was not satisfied. I wanted more. So I had that kind of frustration about 30 years ago at age 24 that caused me to make a radical decision. So, what was that decision? I said that in order to find whatever I want, I can't find it on the outside. All these books that I have, they couldn't give me the answer. All the paths that I went through, they couldn't give me the clue. So I just have to find it myself. So I went to my uncle. I said that you have a room in the basement, and that room is ideal for me. I want to spend a few days in there. And he said that for how long? I said, I don't know, maybe 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, or I never get out of that room. And he said, are you crazy? I said, yes, I'm crazy and I'm frustrated. Both, a mixture of both caused
Mm.
me to just make that decision. And then he said that I noticed that you are stupid as well. I said, why? He said, because you might go in there and die from hunger and never come get out of that room, and then everything is ruined. You ruined your life for nothing. So I said, he is smart. So I went to the market and bought 5 kilos of raisins. I still remember. I bought five kilos
Raisins.
of ra-
Oh my
raisins, and
goodness.
I went into the room, closed the door, turned the light off. There was no windows inside, but there was a small washroom. So I closed the door and I said, I'm gonna stay here until I find the answer to those questions that I have. So I'm sitting in the darkness. After a while, you don't know if it's day or night or whatever it is on the outside. You don't know. You lose track of time. And then I'm sitting and I'm practicing different things that I learned through the past, through the books, one by one. I'm practicing them. And then I couldn't get the results that I wanted. I had my own tests and stuff, so I knew when I'm gonna be there. So what happened was that time passed and you are in the absolute darkness and absolute silence inside. So you're facing yourself and you're facing all your emotions, all your thoughts.
Okay.
There's no escape. There's no escape. Some people say that the worst type of the torture is solitary confinement. When people in prison do something bad, they just put them in the solitary confinement. So I
Sure.
was putting myself in there voluntarily. So you can imagine how frustrating it can be
I
because you're
well,
facing
I
yourself.
work. I worked in the jail, Farzin, so I know what it's like to put people in solitary confinement. And I can tell you that many people that I put in there didn't like it. As a matter of fact, they, like you, told me that they had to face their emotions. They had to face their thoughts. And this is where it got real trippy for me,
Mhm.
because many of the guys that told me that they didn't like being in the, we call it the hole. They didn't
Yeah.
like being in the hole because it made them reflect. It made them reflect about their life. It made them reflect about the mistakes that they made. It made them reflect about everything. And it all came crashing down on them.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And they
Yeah.
didn't have that, no way of getting that processed properly. So
Mhm.
a lot of guys, would run to us and ask for sleeping medications and seeing the psych social worker. And it's like, why don't you just deal with your stuff?
Yeah.
Deal with your stuff, because it's not going to go anywhere. It's going to stay with you until you fix it. And
Mhm.
that's a big problem that a lot of people don't understand. We got to fix our stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
We got to fix our stuff.
Exactly. It's not gonna go anywhere. You're
It's not
carrying.
going no, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So until we understand that, we have to learn how to properly identify those things that uh, bother us, those things that trigger us, and do something about it.
Mhm.
Otherwise, it's just going to continue to linger and
Yeah.
scratch on your head until you get it figured out.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting in the darkness. I'm sitting in the silence and dealing with all those things. And I'm practicing different mantras, different meditation, different things that I learned and stuff. So nothing was working. So after a while, I didn't know how long it was, but I gave up. I said, I'm not gonna be able to do anything. So I'm just gonna sit in the dark, see what happens. And then something started to shift within me. What was that? I felt that there is a sense of warmness in my heart, and the heat started to rise, started as a flame in my heart, and it started to go to all the cells in my body, and I was burning from inside. And on outside, I was shaking and sweating. And all of a sudden, everything shifted within me. So it is hard to explain what happens, but I'm gonna as a give you something that people maybe understand a metaphor better than the actual thing, because sometimes we cannot grasp the vastness of that. So imagine that you have an ice cube in your hand. You go by the ocean and you drop that ice cube into the ocean. The ice cube is floating on top of the water. And then after a while, that ice cube starts to melt. It melts, melts, melts. And when the last piece disappears, it's not ice cube anymore. It is the ocean. So the same thing happened to me. I started melting from inside,
Mm.
burning and melting. And
Mm.
all of a sudden, in one moment, there was no separation. Everything was one.
Mm.
All is one and one is all. That was the experience that I had. So I
Mm.
said that there is no separation. I feel connected with everything and everyone and the whole life. And then things started to shift. So I came out of that experience with some realizations. I came out of the room and I noticed that there was close to 5 days that I was in the room. So I came out with a few realizations. I'm just
Okay.
gonna go through those realizations because it's important. So one is I found that there is a difference between happiness and joy. What is the difference? For happiness, you depend upon other circumstances. You need somebody or something to give you that happy moment. Otherwise, you're not going to be happy. Sometimes you're happy, sometimes you're sad. It depends upon what circumstance we are in. But joy is different. Joy doesn't have the opposite, and joy is inside, and we have access to it all the time. So there's a difference between happiness and joy.
Well, for
So
happiness, Farzin, can you access that within yourself?
So it express that is the joy that express itself as happiness, but it doesn't depend upon situations or people or whatever, because you can be in the worst situation in your life, but
Mm.
if you have access to the joy that you have inside, you're feeling good. It doesn't matter what situation you're in.
Okay.
So no, that is the difference.
Okay.
So the second was the difference between knowledge and wisdom. So that all was coming to me when I had that kind of experience, because you are connecting to the source of all things. So what
Mm.
happened was that I found that whatever that I was looking for in the books, in the past, that was knowledge. Somebody else has experienced something and put it in the books or the words and became knowledge. And I was just going through that knowledge. But wisdom is different. Wisdom is the source of all knowledge.
Mm.
Wisdom is just you have access to that database that everything is in there, from past to the future to the now, everything is in there. So that is a container that contains everything. So it is like the story of that African farmer. He wanted to find diamond because the neighbors said that we are wasting our time in here. Let's go and find diamond. He says, okay. So he sold his farm and went all over the world to find diamond. So a few years passed, and then he couldn't find the diamond, but he died along the way. So the farmer who bought the farm was digging one day, and then he found a piece of stone and he polished it and it was shiny, and he took it to the jeweler, and they found one of the largest diamond mines in Africa in the
Mm.
same farm that the first farmer sold to
Mm-hmm.
go and find the diamond somewhere else. So that is our story. We go try to find the knowledge on the outside, but we have the source of wisdom which is within us. We just have to access.
And to conclude your story, the farmer sold the farm to another person. The person went and dug under the same area that the first farmer did and found more diamonds.
Yeah,
So to continue with your story, you got to keep going. Don't stop. Keep
exactly,
going.
exactly.
Yes, keep going.
Mhm.
Farzin, a question for you.
Sure.
Uh, uh, you talked about uh, the modality that you use as a practitioner, the JoyfulFix Quantum Healing method.
Yeah,
Did I get that right?
yeah.
Talk about that. Break that down for me. What does that mean?
Sure. So, JoyfulFix. So, what was the reason that JoyfulFix was born as a modality? So, so I had that experience at age 24, and another thing that opened up for me was the difference between the pain and the suffering. So I knew that there's a difference between the pain and suffering. Why? Because in order to grow, we have to face pain sometimes. Like in snake is growing, and after a while, the skin doesn't fit anymore. So the snake has to shed the skin, the old skin, to grow the new one. So what happens is that as we are expanding, as we are growing, sometimes we go through pain. Just like someone who goes to the gym lifts those weights to gain muscle, and then it's painful, but he knows that in order to have better muscle tone, we have to go through the pain. So we know what pain is. But suffering is a different story. Suffering is what we have in our mind. And, we are the only species who gets punished for something million times. How? We punish ourselves. So we make a mistake million years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 40 years ago, and we are still thinking about it, and we are still blaming ourselves, going through shame and guilt and stuff, and then putting pressure on ourselves 100 times. Why? Because we have something that differentiates us from other species, which is called prefrontal cortex. So the front part of our brain. See, we analyze everything, we mentalize everything. So what happens is that creates suffering. So I always say pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. When we know that what is suffering is doing to us, we can just drop it. We don't need to carry that shame and guilt and those kind of things. So I knew that I had to go through some pain. I didn't know what type of pain it's going to be, but I found out. So what happened was that a few years after, I had a back injury at work. So I tried to lift something and I injured my back.
Okay.
That pain stayed with me for 15 years.
Okay.
It was a type of chronic pain. When a pain is more than 6 months, it means it's chronic because all the cells in your body is changed after 6 months. So it's not physical. So I I had to go to therapy almost every week to get out of the freeze mode because my neck and upper back would freeze. I couldn't uh, just look at the sides. I couldn't turn my head to the sides. I had to go to therapy to release physiotherapy or something. And then they would give me a relief. And after a week or so, same story. And no specialist could help me because all the MRI tests was coming clean. They couldn't point finger to a specific muscle. So they said that we cannot do anything. Just take the medications or do something. We cannot do anything. So I was helpless. So nobody could help me. After 15 years, a friend just told me that maybe I can help you. So she said that we're gonna have a couple of phone calls. She called me a couple of times and she released the trapped emotions that I was carrying at the time of accident. At the time, I didn't know what trapped emotion is. Trapped emotion is those unprocessed emotions that we carry with us. Sometimes you have an emotion like grief, for example. And then you start thinking about it, you start using the prefrontal cortex, thinking, discussing it with others, and go make it longer and longer and longer. And your body, your subconscious mind says that it is an unprocessed emotion. So I'm just gonna keep it somewhere in the body. So you have that kind of emotion, trapped emotion of grief. And then you see life with those lenses, the dark lenses, because you have those kind of vibration within you. You're carrying that vibration of grief. It might be anger, it might be failure, it might be anything, guilt and shame, whatever. So everybody on average is carrying more than 200 of those trapped emotions. And those are the weight that we are carrying in our body. It is affecting our organs, is affecting our mood, is affecting our behavior, is affecting everything. So we are having those kind of trapped emotions based on our experiences. So she released the trapped emotions related to the pain that I had, and I was fine. So I was wondering what happened. Nobody, none of those specialists could help me. But she just gave me a couple of phone calls and she released those, and I'm fine after 15 years of suffering and pain. So I was wondering. So, and she said that you have the talent to do the same thing for others. That is why I became a certified emotional practitioner. I went on to Dr. Bradley Nelson and learned the, the things. So I became an emotion code practitioner and help others to do the same thing for themselves. So to just help them, I just help them to release those kind of blockages that they have. And then later on, I got another certification for removing those limiting beliefs as well. And then a combination of those, when I was working on people, I noticed that I am releasing those kind of blockages that they have, and they see the results. And it's very satisfying. But I noticed that at the same time, I can work on expanding their view as well. So they not only they release those blockages, they can expand their view and see life from a different perspective. So that's why I created that modality called JoyfulFix Quantum Healing, because in that I help people to have those kind of breakthrough moments, to be able to uh, see themselves from a different perspective. Because sometimes we are limiting ourselves, we're limiting our view like this. Some people think that they are their physical body. You know, people are fighting for race, people are fighting for gender, people are fighting for the skin color and those kind of things, and they're killing each other because they don't know the fact that we are not our physical body. If I be my physical body, if I cut my hand and put it in front of me, I'm going to be a different person, but I'm not a different person. Mm-hmm. Not my physical body. I'm beyond all that. You know, that is a basic understanding. It's not that complicated, but people are fighting and fighting. And then I realized that we are not our emotions. Our emotions are creating those kind of behaviors. The trapped emotions that I was talking about. If I have the trapped emotion of anger, I behave as an angry man. But I'm not my emotions. Because if I be my emotions, if I change my mood, I'm going to be a different person. No, I'm still the same person. I'm not my emotions. I'm not my behaviors. So that is a very profound understanding. Because we judge people based on their behaviors, but they are not their behaviors. I'm not the behavior. I'm just carrying the emotion of anger, but I'm not angry. I cannot associate myself with that anger. It is like a stain on my white shirt that I'm wearing, and I go outside, it gets dirty. It can be washed. So, and the other thing that I realized was that we are not our thoughts.
We are not our thoughts?
No, because Descartes says, I am because I think. But I say that if I don't think about anything, do I still exist? Yeah, I still exist. I can close my eyes and still not thinking about anything. I still exist. So I am beyond my thoughts. I am beyond my emotions. I am beyond my physical existence. Those are just the layers. Who am I? I'm a consciousness that is beyond all those. Some people call it soul, some people call it consciousness. It doesn't matter what you call it, but the fact is that we are beyond all those. And then those kind of small understandings opens up our perspective towards life and towards ourselves and others.
And you also talked about the discovery of the heart wall, which is based about emotions and letting go of those emotions and those feelings, right?
Yes. So what happened was that lady who helped me to release those emotions and get rid of that pain that I was carrying for 15 years, as we continue working, she just released my heart wall as well. And what is heart wall?
Yes.
Heart is very sensitive. Heart is very sensitive. You know, some people talk about the heartbreak, and some people have the feeling that somebody just broke their heart. And did you know that heartbreak is literal? It is existing. It is something that we experience on the physical heart. Why? Because a scientist in Japan, who was a physician a few years ago, discovered that there are lines on our hearts, just the same lines that we get when we have a cracked bone. We go under X-ray, they discover that there is a line on our bone, and they say that that bone is cracked. So we get the same lines on our heart. And for everybody is different. Some people have it, some people don't have. So those are broken heart. Literal. Our heart breaks. It's very sensitive.
Literally.
And, yeah. And then the other thing is that in medical term, there is something called broken heart syndrome. The symptoms are exactly the same as the heart attack. So you feel pain in your chest, shortage of breath, and you call the emergency, and they said that you have to rush to the hospital. Those are heart attack. You might have a heart attack. They send the ambulance, and then you go to hospital, they examine, and they said, no, fortunately, it wasn't a heart attack. It was broken heart syndrome. There is that medical term called broken heart syndrome. So when we have a bunch of those cracks on our heart, it leads to that stage. So our heart is very important. Why? Because our heart knows everything. Why? There is an institute called Heart Math Institute. It's a non-profit organization. So they were examining people's hearts in different parts of the world. So they just connect those things to the body, and then they measure the heartbeat and heart rate and those kind of things. So they're examining those kind of things. And then when 9/11 happened, they discovered something big. They noticed that all the people who were connected to those machines, their heart started to act crazy before that thing happened. Half an hour before that thing happened. Nobody knew about it, but their heart started to act crazy. You know, our heart knows what is happening in the future. Heart is very sensitive.
Wow.
And they measure that for every piece of information that goes from brain to the heart, 9 pieces of information goes from heart to the brain. So you can tell me who is the boss in our body, brain or heart. So I can talk hours about that. So I don't want to take a lot of time for that. But heart is very sensitive. So when there is something happening for us, and then we want to protect our heart, what can we do? We can't do much, but our subconscious mind does something. It builds a shelter around our heart. So imagine that there is a loss of a loved one in your family, or there is a separation. And so I just go through a divorce process or something like that with somebody who I had a long relationship or something like that. Or there's a pressure from somebody towards me and emotional pressure. So my subconscious mind says that I want to protect the heart. So it grabs the material to build a shelter around our heart. What is those materials? It's the trapped emotions that we have in our body. So it builds a shelter. That shelter is like a bomb shelter. Imagine that there is war and we are under attack. The planes are shedding bombs. So we go to the bomb shelter and then we lose our communication with outside world. And now 10 years has passed from that war and we are still living in the bomb shelter. The same feeling is when we have a heart war. So that moment of frustration or trauma or whatever is past, and we are still carrying that shield around our heart. So it causes us not to be able to communicate with our hearts properly. How? I told you, all the wisdom is within our heart. All the joy is within our heart. If we be able to access it, but we have the heart wall. Over 93% of people have the heart wall. So it is not possible to get access to all the source of joy and wisdom. And why is it important to have access to that? For the joy, of course, when you have access to source of joy, it doesn't matter what other circumstances you're in, you can be always in the state of joy. And for the wisdom, it is very crucial. Why? Because every one of us is just one idea away from being on top of our game. It doesn't matter what it is. I give you an example. Somebody came up with that idea of Airbnb. So they rented their room and they said that maybe we can build a system around it, and they offered it to the world. And now everybody is using those kind of things in the world. So just one idea spread throughout the world. So we are just one idea away from being millionaire, billionaire, on top of our game and being an expert in this and that. And all the valuable things that you see in life is coming from inside. It's not copying. Why? Because if I go to a museum, let's say I go to France and I visit Paris and I go to the Louvre Museum, and then I'm standing in front of the Mona Lisa painting. And then I notice that there are a lot of people in there gathering just to watch that painting. And I'm wondering, what is in that painting? It's nothing spectacular, it's just a painting. Why it is attracting that many people? The reason is that if somebody copied a painting, it's not valuable. It doesn't have the same amount of energy, because whoever who created that painting put their energy signature in there. And it depends upon where it is coming from. If it's just a copy, it's not valuable. But if it's something from inside, it's coming, and you're creating a piece of music, you're creating a piece of art, like a painting or a statue or whatever. Whatever that you are creating is going to be lasting forever. All the literature, the great literature that we have is the result of that, you know. So we are all having access to that source of wisdom.
Yeah.
If the heart wall is protecting that kind of things from us, but if we don't have the heart wall, we all have access to that.
Got it. But my thing is this with us and the heart. We have to learn how to forgive. And we have to learn how to forgive ourselves, right?
Exactly.
I think we have to do that first. And I think that that's one of the biggest obstacles for us as human beings, is that we don't give ourselves enough grace to be okay when mistakes happen or whatever. But we also have to learn how to forgive ourselves and feed ourselves and love ourselves and nurture ourselves. Because what good is it for me to nurture somebody and be productive for everybody else when I'm not productive within my own frame of mind? So how can I, or how can we align ourselves with our personal values and goals so that we can be whole or have a purposeful life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
You
that's a
understand?
very good question. That's a good question. So let's start with forgiving ourselves and others. Those are the subjects that I covered in my book. They're very important subjects that we have to know how we can do it. So forgiving ourselves. Uh, if you know that you are carrying 200, 300 of those trapped emotions, and those kind of things are creating those scenarios for yourself to just be like this and do this and do that, and then those can be washed, does it change the perspective that you have towards you? Because sometimes we feel that I go through shame and guilt and those kind of things. I cannot forgive myself. But those kind of things vanish when you notice that we are not our physical body, we are not our emotions, and we are not our thoughts. So every time that you're blaming yourself, just ask yourself, who am I? And then go through the elimination. You say that I'm not my physical body, I'm not my emotions, I'm not my thoughts. Then who am I? I'm beyond all those things. And when you are beyond something, you can change it. But when you are lower than something, you cannot change it. A master can order the slave to do something, but the slave cannot order the master to do something. So where do you see yourself? Do you see yourself as a master or a slave? Because if we are in the position of physical, emotional, mental, we are a slave. But when we are beyond those, we are the master. It means that we have the capacity to change all those. So we go through those eliminations and we conclude that we are beyond all those layers. And then we conclude that those can be washed. Whatever pain, whatever suffering, whatever thing that happened in the past, how can it be washed? I just explained the details in my book. It can be washed with love, because there are two forces battling with each other all the time. One is fear and one is love.
Okay.
So when we have access to that true self, when we are behaving from that perspective, we have access to love, and then it can heal everything. So that is how you can forgive yourself. And then that is how you can forgive others. Because sometimes we are wearing those judgment glasses. Everywhere we go to the mall, we are starting to judging others. Look how that person is behaving. Look how that person is dressed up. Look how this person is. Their face is like this. They are fat. They are thin. So we are judging and judging and judging. We have those glasses of judgment. But when you see yourself as beyond physical, emotional, mental level, you are a soul, you are a spark of God with the same qualities. You notice that whatever that is coming out of you is love. So your view starts to shift. Instead of looking at those kind of appearances on physical, emotional, mental, you are seeing the good in people, the capacity they have. the diamond that they are carrying in their heart. So it is covered with a lot of layers, but it doesn't matter. They are not their behaviors. They are not their skin color. They are not their appearance. They're not what their opinion is. Sometimes some people, one person gives you an opinion and you start judging that person. You're smashing that person in your head. So people are not their opinions. People are not their behaviors. People are not their appearance. So you start looking at them differently, with compassion, with understanding, with love. So you can have that kind of view towards yourself, and it spreads like a wildfire. It spreads around. That kind of shine that comes out, you become the sun that is shining. It doesn't matter, if I'm standing in here and I'm outside, sun is shining, and all of a sudden there are clouds that covers the sun. I don't see the shine anymore. So, and then it goes to the night. I don't see the sun anymore. So I'm just missing. I wish I could have the feeling of warmth and stuff. But what if I am the sun? It doesn't matter if there's cloud out there, or there is just whatever blockages there's out there. When you are shining the light to the outside world, you are the light. And then you don't even need to forgive yourself, because you are all love. And then you don't need to forgive others, because there's nothing existing in that area that is bothering you, because you are paying attention to all the good things in people. You're helping them to unlock their true potential. Whatever you say, you tell others and stuff, you're just helping them to grow. You don't put them down for their opinion. Or, it's very funny. Sometimes we look at outside world and you see that people are killing each other, because one is on in this side of the border and the other one is on the other side of the border, and their distance is not far, but they associate themselves with things and they go and battle and they kill each other. So we can have a wider perspective. We have a choice. When we drop those blinders, and then we see life from a different perspective.
Speaking of perspective and keeping the blinders on, you mentioned in your bio that there were 3 types of stagnation that holds people back. What are they?
So in my book, I explained that there are 3 types of stagnation, according to whatever I just figured out by myself. So the first one is, I call it static stagnation. Static stagnation is sometimes you feel stuck. So there are things happening in your life that you don't even want to deal with those. There are some shifts in your life, like your career or like whatever. And then you don't even want to come out of bed. So that is the stress response that we have, which is called freeze mode. So we have fight or flight or freeze. So that is the freeze mode that we experience in life. Sometimes we have those kind of freeze mode. So I call that static stagnation. And if you know how to deal with it, there are some practical tips in my book. So I give people those kind of tools that they can use to get out of that scenario. So the second one is dynamic stagnation. What is dynamic stagnation? Dynamic stagnation is like this. You are active, you go to work, do the things that you do at work, you come home, do the things that you do at home, go to work the next day, come to home, and years after years, and then you look back and you notice that you have wasted your whole life. No achievement, no excitement, no growth, nothing. You just wasted your whole life. So I call that dynamic stagnation. It's a trap. Sometimes even the society encourage us to just do things like that to be a good workhorse for the society. But some of us, we are not satisfied with that. We want to be more and do more and have more. So what do we do to get out of that trap? We start going through a process of uh, another thing that sometimes I call it inner stagnation. So we become a warrior. We start crashing those boundaries. We say that I don't want to stay in this safe zone forever. I'm just going to take a risk and go outside, experience, do things that I want to do. We might build a business, we might do things that we've never done, but we're not satisfied with that boring life. So high achievers are like that. They want to just be more than just a regular person. So what happens is that that person goes through the battle with the subconscious mind to be able to do the things to build a business and so on. And sometimes they are successful. They go on top of the mountain of success. They build an empire, a good business. But while there, they notice that they are not happy because they thought that they're going to be happy when they are up there. But they didn't know that they have to start with happiness. So they feel cheated because they were promised that when you get there, you're going to be happy. They're there that they're not happy. So a lot of them have those kind of experiences that some people call it a midlife crisis and so on. So we feel that we are not happy, we are depressed. So what happens is another scenario. They go through the process to build that business or do more and be more and have more, but they put a lot of stress on themselves. Mm-hmm. Why? Because it is not easy to go and fight and battle with hustle and grind. So there are two elements. Everybody says that in order to do something spectacular, you have to go through hustle and grind. So hustle and grind comes with stress and anxiety. Right. And then it takes a toll on their body. So they are on top of the mountain, but they feel not being healthy, physically healthy. They lose their physical health. So another scenario, they might go there, but what happens is that they are stealing the time that they could spend with their loved ones and spending that time in their business or whatever that they are doing. And then it creates that a scenario that they lose their relationships, that the good relationships that they have with whoever around them. So if I build a business and I be unhealthy and I lose my relationships and I'm not be happy, what is in there for me? So the scenario is, I call that inner stagnation. The whole thing is inner stagnation. And there are ways that help us to get out of that misery. Because if we know those kind of things, we know how to deal with it. So if we be able to bring our subconscious mind on board for the things that we want to do, life is easy. Why? Because subconscious mind is like a train that's going south. And then all of a sudden I'm in the train and I decide to go north. Subconscious mind is all the programs, all the things that have brought me to this point. You know, all the beliefs and whatever. Everything together is the train that is going south. Then I decide to go north. I'm still in the train. While in the train, I decide to go north. I walk towards north inside the train. Where do I end up? South, of course, because the train is going south. So I have to be able to change the direction of the train to go north. And it's not an easy thing to do. Some people do it with some cost. So they become a warrior, they win the battle, they lose the war. So they become a wounded warrior at the end. So we don't want that. We want to enjoy the ride. Everybody says that if you be able to enjoy the journey of success, then you can call yourself successful. It is all about the journey. It's not about the destination. So in my book, I have a 10-step process. It's so I'm going to summarize it in 3 steps that solves this problem. So it's a solution for a lot of us that have that kind of hustle and grind lifestyle. So what is that 3-step process? It starts with, when you want to do something, when you want to build something, some people think that they just sit down and imagine things and all of a sudden a building is built in front of them. It's not like that. We have to go and start doing things in stage by stage. So what happens is that we have to break things down to small chunks. So some people call those chunks tasks, the needle moving actions. So we need to do something that takes us to our destination. So we have a goal, we break it down into smaller chunks. So those tasks, little tasks. But the problem is that those are called tasks and nobody likes to do tasks. And when we start doing those tasks, our subconscious mind is blocking us because it says that I don't want you to just go there. It's danger in there. So all the alarm goes off and then it prevents us to move forward. So the trick is that we can change the name from task to game. And what happens is that everybody likes to play games. It makes us feel good. It's embedded in us from childhood. When we are a child, we just go to the playground and we have the slide and the swing and we play with others and play tag and everything. So it's a game. So when you call it a game, excitement comes. And then, so we call those small chunks or tasks, little games. And then the 3-step process starts when you want to go to sleep. The first step is game plan. You think about what game you want to play the next day. You pick the game from those list of games, the tasks that you call games. And then you say, yeah, I'm going to play that game and that game, a couple of games, and you just start thinking about those games, and then you go to sleep. So what is the advantage of that? When we go to sleep, we usually think about all the mistakes, all the stress, all the things that might happen the day after, all those kind of things. And then we have a hard time to just go to sleep. And then before you go to sleep, your mind is wide open because we are in the alpha state. Your mind is wide open. Your subconscious mind is wide open for programming. Whatever program you put it in there is going to affect your life. We just put all the stress and anxiety and fear and misery and grief and whatever. We put everything in there. But let's change it. Let's put those little games in there. So before you go to sleep, you just think about those games and you get excited. And then that is the first step, game plan. The next step is warm up. I call it warm up in my book. So what is warm up? Warm up is the process of mental rehearsal. So before you wake up, you start thinking about, as soon as you wake up, you are not out of bed yet. Your eyes are still closed. You are still in that alpha state. You start thinking about those games and you play those games in your mind to the end with all the details. And then you feel great because you finished that game and you're enjoying it. You bring all those emotions. and then you open your eyes and go through life. So that is the warm-up. So you programmed your mind 2 times now. One before you go to sleep and one after you just wake up.
Okay.
So the third step is just playing that game during the day. And it becomes automatic. If you do the 2 steps properly, the third step is automatic because it is now part of the automatic process, which is called subconscious mind. So you start playing that game and you're enjoying that. And it helps you to go towards your destination. It's like cruising. When you are driving, sometimes we are not always in exactly at the right angle towards the road. Sometimes we go a little bit to the left, but we just correct it and we come to the right, and we just change the direction. It keeps us on the road. So if we calculate, most of the time we are not in the proper direction, but we adjust it all the time. So the same thing happens. We play the game, and then the next day you say that I can play it better, or I can adjust it, I can play another game. So you just play and play and play, and then all of a sudden you are at your destination. And you were enjoying the ride. So that is the difference. That is not the path of hustle and grind. That is the path of joy and ease towards the success.
Amen to that. Farzin, how can people contact you?
Sure. So I have a website called JoyfulFix, and so on the contact page is joyfulfix.com. So that is the website. So on the contact page of the website, I created a quiz, a free quiz for people. So it covers 4 aspects of life: health, wealth, relationship, and happiness. Those 4 aspects are like the 4 tires of a car. If one tire is flat, what happens is that we cannot move far. We have to fix it. So when people ask those 20 questions, it gives them the mark for each aspect of those 4 aspects of life. So it is called life quality assessment. So they get a score on the life quality assessment test. So, and then when they have the results, we can have a free consultation. I tell them what they can do to have things to improve their aspects. So what happens is that there are 2 things in that test that we have to pay attention to, the 2 scores. One is the highest score from those 4 levels, and one is the lowest score. Why the highest score? For example, if I have a high score on relationship, it means that I can help others with relationship. I'm doing something good in that aspect of my life. So it is important to know what your capabilities are. So, and then if I have problem in my wealth based on the score that I'm getting in that test, it means that I have to pay attention to that flat tire. Otherwise, I'm not gonna move far in life. So it gives us some roadmap. So when people call me for a free consultation, we go through those results and then we make a roadmap for them. Okay. And then they can go through those roadmaps themselves, or I can help them out in the process.
Awesome, sir. You have a book. What's the title of your book?
The title is JoyfulFix: How to Break Free from Stagnation and Move Forward in Life.
Dreadful Fix?
Yeah.
Okay. So somebody can just look that up and find it, or?
Yeah, if they go to my website, the joyfulfix.com, so in there is a one of the tabs is related to the book, the information about the book, what is in there, and those kind of things. And then they have a couple of links. One is the link to the Amazon for the physical book that they get through Amazon. And the other link is that I recently published a audio and ebook version combined, and it is accessible through my website only. So, and it's with a very low cost, they can acquire the ebook and audiobook with through that link that is in my website.
Okay, awesome. Farzin Marzinani, it has been a great pleasure to have you on the show. I've learned a great deal over this last hour talking with you and listening to you. I greatly appreciate you coming on and taking the time out to educate the listeners as well as myself about life.
Yeah, we are all learning together. You know, every time that two people are gathered together somewhere, something special happens. Why? Because that is the case of 1 + 1 is more than 2. Because they're combining those kind of wisdom together, and something big starts to be created out of that. So what you are doing is very important. You are creating those moments for people. So so it is, I admire whatever you are doing. It's very important.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Farzin, it's been a pleasure to have you. Thank you for coming on. And for those of you who were paying attention and listening, my name is Mark Ross, and this has been another episode of the Speak Your Truth with Mark Ross podcast. Remember this, everyone, self-care is important. So make sure that you make your mental health and your physical health a priority. Every day, do it first. With that being said, have a good night, everybody. And you have a good night too, Farzin.
Good night.
All right. Bye-bye now.
Bye.